Chicago and I are absolutely stoked you're back in town. But on that note, something that's been stuck in my vibrational core since the last time we spoke were some scathing words that you shared with me. And those words, I remember them verbatim as if I'm sat there in this conversation right now. Your assumption is we're not flowing. Our knowing is you're not listening. And while that was scathing at the time, it's been incredibly potent golden nugget.
First of all, it's because words don't teach. And when you're all wadded up in a question, you almost never can hear the answer. So even though you're asking, step one's happening vividly, and step two is flowing, if you're all wadded up in the question, then you aren't hearing to the degree that you found a way to later. That's right. The question and the answer are two very different frequencies. They're on opposite ends of the stick. They're important to each other, but there often needs to be a little space between the asking and the allowing until you get really good at this. And once you get really good about this, you'll have a thought and there it'll be, and another thought and there it'll be, and you have another thought and there it'll be, and then there'll be somebody else dancing with you in the same way, and you will be in ecstasy for periods of time while you're watching the universe dance with you, because you have the ability to dance like that.
Dabbling in the lesser or the lower emotions of the scale.
Can you put the emotional scale up for a moment? We wouldn't call it dabbling. We would call it two different perspectives being exposed in a moment. We would call it brilliant guidance that indicates my human perspective is different than my non-physical perspective. And then you got a choice to make. You can go with the flow of the energy that creates worlds, or you can suck at that.
But let's talk about the provocation that erupts from those lesser emotions when I've fallen off my high-flying disc and I find myself dabbling around in these lower emotional...
Well, you know why? You're not the dabbler. You're the dabbled. Stay with us. We're not as crazy as it sounds. The law of attraction is bringing to you things that match what you've got going on. So when you feel like that, it means that's your point of attraction. Do something about it. Doesn't mean you're bad, doesn't mean you're wrong, doesn't mean you shoulda, woulda, coulda, doesn't mean anything. There's no judgment from anywhere. All it simply means is you want this and you're focused over here. That's all that means. That would be like saying, well, all day yesterday I dabbled around with only an 8/10 of a tank of gas. I just dabbled around. And we say, you could have stopped and filled it up anytime you wanted. Yeah, but I just dabbled around. I knew I could have filled it up, I just didn't bother. Well, it's not any more serious than that.
But there is benefit in that provocation in then stimulating, I know what I don't want, and therefore the provocation comes, or the clarity comes from knowing what I do want then, right?
When Esther has a rough patch, like you're describing, where she's stuck on something and so she's attracting a lot around that, and then clarity comes, she says every time, that dabbling, she didn't use that word, but that dabbling around on the lower half of the emotional scale was a small price to pay for the clarity that I now have. It's all part of the deciding process. You see, here's the thing. Oh, we like saying this to you. We haven't said this before to anyone, not in this way. So you're moving through life knowing what you don't want, knowing what you do want, knowing what you don't want, knowing what you do want. Rockets going, rockets going, rockets going. Clarification, preferences, decisions, determinations, desires, all going to your vibrational reality where your inner being is focused and your inner being receives and then focuses upon each of those pieces as they come in. So all those decisions, all that clarity has been made incrementally. And then the law of attraction gathers all of the cooperative components under the focus, the wise and steady focus of your inner being. So this masterful creation that you have created is taking place. So then when you are not doing that thing you do where you're holding your cork under the water, when you are in a moment of feeling wonderful, then you receive the benefit of all of that, all that has been amassed and all that has been cooperatively gathered and all that your inner being is focused upon, and you have these flashes of clarity. It's like you can't remember the incident that made you want that little piece and the incident that made you want that little piece and the incident that made you want that little piece and the incident that made you want, but all of these pieces are together and the law of attraction is gathering them all together, and there's this magnificent thing that you've created little by little by little by little, and then in a moment of not doing that thing you do to block it, you have clarity. You get to see all of it and know all of it in its wholeness for just a moment. When you start feeling like that, you're on the brink of that stuff manifesting into your experience. So don't beat up on yourself for what you're describing as the dabbling. Contrast matters. How are you going to define what you want? You're constantly having new experiences. We're going to say this specifically to you. You don't give yourself credit for the huge number of new experiences that you have on a daily basis because you don't want to admit that you don't know it all. A year from now, we'll have the beginning conversation with him again. No, we're not just talking to you. Esther feels it every day. Something that she has thought she's known for a very long time. And because she thought she's known it and she continues, then a new life experience will upend this thing that she thought she knew, that she thought was right. And as it gets upended and then the clarity occurs,